Okay, thank you very much for coming to Planning Application Committee. Today we have got 3 items on the agenda, and the first one, no, we've got to come through apologies first. Apologies, Francis.
Chair, we have had apologies from Councillors Everett and Councillor Vaughan Thomas, and also from Councillor Stootley, who is on other council business. He's attending a meeting to represent the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest, anyone? No, thank you very much. Minutes of last meeting, do we agree they're a quick record? People who are here, thank you very much. Now we move on to the planning applications, and we will move on to the first one now, which is the World of Beds, Curtis House, Curtis Road, Norwich. And I'll ask Marie to take us through the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The application site is the World of Bed store or former store on Curtis Road. This is an outline application including matters of access and layout for the demolition of the existing buildings on site and redevelopment of the site with 7 houses, which would be a mix of 2 and 3 bedrooms. Looking at the application site here outlined in red, this is Curtis Road, just south of Malcross Lane on the outer ring road. This is an area of mixed character and use. There's a defined employment area that's protected by policy to the east and south of the site, but the application site itself is outside the boundary of that. Within that employment area, there's an engineering company, car sales and other light industrial uses. The western branch of Curtis Road here is residential in use and is occupied by semi-detached houses and bungalows. They sit in reasonably generous plots and have a suburban character. To the south of the site there's Baxter Court, which is a residential road which is accessed via Aylsham Road, and the dwellings there are denser in character. The site itself, as I said, is occupied by a vacant retail store. The site's formed by sort of an accumulation of buildings and extensions that have developed over the years, and they cover the majority of the footprint of the site, with the exception of some parking and access to the north, a separate vehicular access in the southeast corner, and a vacant area of land extending to the west at the rear. So the application is an outline application seeking consent for the demolition of those buildings and the erection of 7 dwellings on the site. Outline consent is sought for the layout and access only, so these are the only matters to be determined in this application. The scale, appearance and landscaping of the site would be reserved matters that would require separate subsequent applications for approval should this outline permission be granted. Any indication of the scale, appearance and landscape that's shown in the drawings in this presentation is indicative only. So looking at the proposed layout, which approval is sought for, the 7 dwellings would take the form of 2 pairs of semi-detached dwellings facing Curtis Road to the north. 3 of these would have 2 parking spaces each, accessed directly off the road, and plot 4, which is the corner plot here, would have tandem parking within a car park structure along the eastern boundary of the site, accessed from a turning and parking area, accessed from this position here, that would serve a further pair of semi-detached dwellings, and via a private drive there would be access to the 7th dwelling, which would be a detached 3-bedroom, 2-storey dwelling at the rear of the site here. The layout allows for each dwelling to have garden space at the rear that would incorporate bin and cycle storage. The private drive accessing plot 7 here is of a distance and constrained width that wouldn't fully comply with building regulation requirements for access for fire appliances. The constraints of the site are such that it can't be amended to comply with those requirements. So in conversation with building control, it has been indicated that alternative measures, which might include sprinklers within the dwelling, would be necessary in order to comply with building regulations for fire safety. The image at the top of the screen here is an indicative view of the east elevation that would face towards the employment area. On the plan here, the orientation's changed, so it's north in this direction on this plan. In this area it's proposed to have a carport structure. This has been informed by a noise impact assessment, which has found that the employment uses, and specifically an engineering company southeast of the site, would result in noise impacts that would be classified as adverse during the daytime hours and significantly adverse during the nighttime hours if they were not mitigated. The purpose of this carport structure is to provide a physical barrier that would help to attenuate that noise and protect the dwellings from it, both in the gardens and in the internal accommodation. And it's also necessary as part of those noise mitigation measures for the boundary wall either side of the car park entrance to be 2.5 metres in height and raised to 2.8 metres along the southern boundary. This is another indicative view of that corner plot, plot 4, and the dwellings that would front Curtis Road, and how that carport structure and the boundary walls to the car park opening might appear. The image here is to help us consider the impact of the proposed dwellings on daylight to neighbouring dwellings. The yellow lines that you can see indicated here show a 25-degree line taken from the ground floor windows of those neighbouring dwellings. In accordance with building research establishment guidance, if that line, that 25-degree angle, is intersected by any of the proposed dwellings, there would be some impact on daylight to those. The only point of intersection of that line from existing dwellings is from one window to the front of the neighbouring dwelling on Baxter Court to the indicated roof line of the dwelling on plot 7. It would just intersect the corner of that. But it's considered that this diagram indicates that the layout that's proposed wouldn't result in any significant adverse impacts on the light neighbouring dwellings or those within the site, and this would require further consideration at reserve matter stage when the scale and appearance is worked up in detail. The image here shows the potential overshadowing from the proposed dwellings, and it shows what the shading would be at noon in August. This is a time when the sun would be quite high in the sky, and it is acknowledged that there would be times of the day and the year when it would be lower in the sky and have a greater impact. However, it is considered to help demonstrate that the proposed position of the dwellings within the site would not result in any significant adverse overshadowing to neighbouring dwellings and their gardens, and this aspect of the proposed layout wouldn't be unacceptable. Moving on to photos of the site. This is standing on Curtis Road with our back to Milecross Lane, looking at the application site here. In the background you can see some of the light industrial units at the southern end of Curtis Road, and just to the side you can see a hedge boundary to one of the neighbouring residential dwellings. Turning round just to look at the prominent position that the site occupies on the corner here, you can see that it is formed of an accumulation of different building forms, materials and scales across the site. On the right hand side of the image here you can see the scale of some of the neighbouring dwellings on Curtis Road, and the trees that you can see here, this group to the front and a further individual tree to the back, are just outside the boundary of the site within the neighbouring dwelling, and they have been taken into account in the design of the layout. Moving down and standing at the southern end of Curtis Road, looking back north towards Milecross Lane, the building that you can see here with the gable and the roller shutter door facing towards the road is the southern extent of the application site. On the opposite side of the road you've got the engineering company. There's also a light industrial unit to the south, accessed by the gates here. And then standing on the residential part of Curtis Road west of the site, looking back east, just to help orientate you, the red car that you can see here is parked at the front of the application site, and here you can see the scale of the semi-detached houses along the road. There are also some bungalows here, and you can see the suburban character of the area. Now, in terms of assessment, this is fully set out in your report, but there's no policy objection to the loss of the existing retail use on the site or to the redevelopment of the site for housing. Access is one of the matters to be considered, and the Highway Authority have no objection to this, subject to conditions securing provision of the access and parking shown on the proposed layout and necessary highway works around the site. Access to plot 7 would not be in compliance with building regulation requirements for fire appliances, and there's insufficient space to bring the site into compliance with this. So alternative measures shall need to be agreed to satisfy building regulations in due course. This is not an insurmountable issue, and this aspect of the proposal is not unacceptable in planning terms. The proposed layout is considered to satisfactorily respond to the local character and not result in any unacceptable harm to the amenity of neighbouring occupiers. To provide an acceptable standard of amenity to future occupiers of the site, it is necessary for noise mitigation measures to be incorporated in both the fabric of the dwellings and the external boundary treatments. Whilst this might not be the optimal design solution for the site, it's not considered that they would cause any unacceptable harm to the character of the area. The proposal is acceptable in all other respects, subject to the conditions which are listed in the report, and it's therefore recommended for approval.
Thank you very much. We haven't got any speaks to this, so we'll move to questions. I've got a couple. Can you just tell me about the street furniture, which might have to be, can you show me that on a picture? And also about, there's a thing that you might have to use, move a street lamp as well, the public footpath lamp. Will that make any difference where they move it to? I know the applicant's got to pay for all this to be done if anything happened, but will it make a difference? Will it be a darker place or anything like that where they would move it to?
Yeah, so on the photo here, it's this street lamp here, which also has a road sign attached to it, and there's also a road nameplate at the entrance. So that's the street furniture that's been proposed, that's been referred to. The layout does cite some parking along here, but there are spaces within a very short distance of the existing street light where it could be repositioned to, and that would require agreement with the Highway Authority.
Thank you very much. Councillor Chairman.
Hi. So I was a little bit confused because it says that the buildings assessed are not suitable for bird nesting. Would it not, and that there were trees on site but there aren't now, and the lack of trees would explain why there are no bats within the vicinity, because there's no reason for them to be there to forage. Would it not be worth including on the premises? Would they not be a sensible addition to this application?
Yeah, one of the recommended conditions is that biodiversity enhancements would be agreed by condition. So in due course, it would be necessary to look at those measures, and it could include things like swift bricks and bat boxes to be incorporated in the design of the dwellings, so that there is some enhancement from the existing situation.
Okay, so can I advocate for that here now? For them to be a condition?
The condition is recommended for the biodiversity enhancements. What those specific measures are is difficult to specify at this stage, but would certainly take into account when considering what the optimum solution for the site is.
Thank you.
Councillor Sands.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions, if I may. Looking at this diagram, if you don't mind. Yeah, there seems to be a row of bushes coming down alongside the driveway and a planter box across the front. If that row of bushes was pushed back a metre and that planter box was perhaps shortened by about a metre, there'd be ample room to get a fire tender or indeed any truck or removals van up that driveway. So hasn't that been considered? And I have a second question, if I may. I'll give that now. Relates to this diagram, if I may. Right at the back of that sort of, extension to the block, there seems to be a funny sort of landlocked area. I don't know what that is, but if it is indeed landlocked, could access to that be given through a gate in the back? And then that could actually provide a nice little biodiversity area with some plantings of trees and shrubs. If it's just left alone, it will just be overcome with brambles and buddleia and end up annoying everybody. But if there's some sort of access to it and it's established as an area of biodiversity, it might not be part of this plan, but future-proofing that area, it could be quite useful. Is anything known about that funny little area?
Someone else owns it.
From what I could see on site, it is being used as a garden to one of the neighbouring dwellings, where this plan is showing sort of solid boundaries. I don't think there is a boundary at the moment, so it is open and incorporated as part of another garden.
I wonder if that was the case.
And going back to your first question, if I just move back to the site plan. The issue with getting access for fire appliances is that there are various requirements from building control. Some of them are about the width and construction of private driveways, but it's also about the length and providing turning facilities. So where a private driveway is over 20 metres in length, there's a requirement to provide a turning head which is over 16 metres wide. So the distance here is over 20 metres, but there's not 16 metres of width in this area to provide the turning head that fire appliances would require. So we have looked at whether the layout can be adjusted or whether plot 7 could be omitted entirely to remove that issue. But within the constraints of the site, because it gets so narrow towards this rear part of the site and because the distance from the road is so significant, that it hasn't been possible to incorporate that, and the applicant wishes for this layout to be considered, and the conversations that I've had with building control have advised that it's likely that an alternative means of providing fire safety would be acceptable to them, and that they would consult with the fire service at building regulation stage to ensure that is acceptable.
Councillor Biller.
It actually looks quite nice.
Could you just for background explain the previous application has not been approved? Was that an officer decision and why?
Yes, it was an officer decision. So there was an outline application a couple of years ago which proposed 9 dwellings on the site. So it was much denser and garden spaces and the availability for parking and other things was much more constrained. There were also various items of supporting information that weren't provided with the application. So some of the reasons for refusal were about insufficient information to fully consider it. That information has now all been provided with the current proposal.
Thank you. There's no more questions. The recommendation is to approve. I'll move that. I've got a second. Thank you, Councillor Button. Now we move on to the discussion. Anyone wish to say anything? Councillor Sands and then Councillor Button.
And I apologise for not switching my microphone off before. I think, as a development, I think this is a great use of this plot. They've made excellent use of the space available. Given that finger and the constraints there, I think that will work extremely well. It's certainly a massive improvement over a galvanised iron sort of monstrosity that's clearly past its use-by date, and I think it's going to enhance the entire area. I'm quite impressed with it.
And Councillor Button.
Thank you, Chair. Basically, what I was going to say, and that just actually is a better use of that land, because it incorporates it better in with the rest of the area, which is residential, as opposed to this one bit stuck there on the corner. So, a good use of the land.
Okay, thank you very much. No one else wishes to speak? Or Councillor Biller.
Yeah, I agree that it's a better use of the land. It's obviously unfortunate that with the constraint that it's not possible to provide a more attractive view to this on the street sides, and I hope that the kind of the planting schemes that are indicative on the walls, that they'll be taken seriously, because then it has really the opportunity to really enhance the street view as well.
Thank you. We'll move to the vote now. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous, thank you. Thank you very much for that. That's been passed. We move on now to the second application. I think I might have to declare the interest of Member Campbell, and that's a public house.
Another interest.
Another interest, yeah, I'm afraid.
No, I mean, that's what we call it. Another
Yes, another interest. Another public house. Yep, yeah, no problem.
Our guest is welcome to leave if he wants to. Thank you. Or stay.
That's it, yes, thank you very much. We move on now to the second item, which is the Dog House, 18 St George's Street, and Sarah Hickcliffe will take us through the report. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. So we're dealing with an application for a single-storey rear extension, some lighting, cabling and seating in an outside area at the Dog House public house on St George's Street. We're looking at two applications here, one for planning permission and one for listed building consent. So here's a site location plan. The application site is outlined in red, which consists of the pub and small areas of outside space, one to the north and one to the west. You see the context of it's located on St George's Street, which is has pedestrian and cycle access only, with vehicular access just for properties down there. To the east we've got St Andrew's Hall and Blackfriars Hall, which is a Grade 1 listed building. The building on the application site is a Grade 2 listed building. To the south we've got commercial premises, coffee shop and another public house. To the rear is the rear of City College, and to the north is residential properties within an apartment building. This just shows that in a little more detail, and it highlights the location of the extension on the property, which is to the rear of the property. Directly to the rear is an area of car parking and servicing, so it isn't directly adjacent to any property there. I've got a floor plan here which is perhaps a little bit difficult to see, but it's an existing floor plan and it's turned at 90 degrees to what we were looking at before. So here's the pub, here's the outside space that we're talking about. To the north is the nearest residential properties. We've got St George's Street running along the bottom of the plan, and the bar basically takes up the whole of the ground floor area, and there's a very small kitchen area, internal. So the proposed plan shows the location of the extension to the rear, and the location of the rest of the outside outside seating area that would remain for the public house. So this is proposed to house a new catering kitchen, and then the area of the existing very small kitchen internally will become a glass washing area. There's also, across this plan here, is areas of string festoons, sort of hanging lighting that fairy lighting that will be hung outside above that external space. So what does that look like elevations wise? This is the rear of the property as exists. It's the less formal part of the property. It's already got some existing two-storey and single-storey extensions, which I'll show you on the photographs from the site in a moment. And this is the side elevation. So this is the elevation that faces north, a small porch area there. And then as proposed, this is the area of the new single-storey extension. It's got a monopitched roof that wraps around the edge of the extension, which then leaves a small flat roof area sort of tucked in behind that monopitched roof, which allows the positioning of plant and extract equipment associated with the operation of the kitchen, things like flues, odour management systems. And then, so from the side, which is facing north, you'll get this view of a monopitch roof. It's a brick and tile extension. Just a few photographs of that to show you the context. So this is a view from St George's Street and the pub as you see it. The outside amenity space is enclosed by railings. And this is a view into that area. I must state that this was taken a while ago, and I'll show you some newer photographs. So you see it's traditionally been set out with tables and chairs for outside enjoyment. You can just see in the background the back of City College there, and here is the wall of the residential apartment block adjacent. More recently, there's been an outside catering setup located within that outside space. First of all, it was set back within the site and housed within some temporary gazebos. More recently, that's been removed and it's been replaced by a catering truck, which has been placed in that outside area. Here you see the relationship with the neighbours. Here's just a closer view of the side, north-facing elevation of the pub. And this is round the back, so I said it was less formal. Here's previous two and single-storey extensions and a range of flues, extract equipment, bins. The extension will be to the left of this photo, in this area here, and you can just see the rear of the neighbouring residential properties. And then there's just one final photograph there, so it'll sit behind this close bordered fence. This is a photograph taken from the car parking area, servicing area at the rear, sort of sit tucked in behind that fence. There have been some revisions to the application since it was first submitted. The proposals, there's been the removal of an outside television that was proposed to be located within a fixed TV housing. The lighting that I showed you on one of those plans has been altered so that it isn't attached to the side of the neighbouring flats. And there's been clarification of the extract equipment associated with the operation of the kitchen, so we can be certain that it is appropriate, adequate, and that it sits tucked in behind that the roof. There's been a number of objections from residents in the neighbouring properties. Mainly, they're set out in your report in paragraph 13. Mainly raising issues about noise and disturbance associated with the use of that outside area associated with the introduction of a television. Like I say, that element has now been removed from the application. Other objections surround the operation of the outside catering business in this external area. So the issues that the report deals with was separated into two separate issues, one of heritage and design. So like I said, this is a list of buildings. We looked at the appropriateness of the design and the position of the extension to the rear of the property. It's also located within a conservation area. The Conservation and Design Officer has provided comments and considers that it will result in an improvement to the facilities available for the public house, and which will then help with the long-term viability of the public house and protection of the heritage asset in turn. So it's considered that the works will protect and enhance the significance of the listed building and the character and appearance of the conservation area. The second issue is one of residential amenity. I showed you a relationship with the neighbouring residents there, and their concerns with noise and disturbance associated with the use of the outside area. As I said, the removal of the TV from the proposals has helped to overcome, I think, a lot of the concerns. And the works in themselves, the extension in itself, is not something that will increase usage or noise and disturbance in that area. Public Protection have considered the information that's been provided on the extract equipment and odour management system, and they consider that they're acceptable and should sufficiently reduce odour levels and avoid disturbance to the neighbours. So just to conclude, the extension will help to improve catering facilities within the building and prevent the need for inappropriate external catering provision on the site, which is currently resulting in noise and disturbance to the neighbours. So the recommendation is to approve both the planning and the listed building consent applications, subject to the conditions that are listed for both of those applications on pages 50 and 51 of your report. And you note that they include re-imposition of conditions that prevent the use of the outside area beyond 11 p.m. in the evening, and for no use of amplified sound in this area as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Questions? Councillor Bergman.
Can you just give a little bit more detail around the condition of restricting the timing, so that the report says to reinstate that? Is there currently no condition on restricted timing of using the outdoor seating area? And is 11 o'clock, how does that compare to other places where there's a residential building straight next to an outdoor seating area?
Yes, looking at the planning history, which is set out in the report, pages 43, 44, there's quite a number of applications that have been there over the year for those rear extensions, for advertisements, for extract and air conditioning units. Looking back through the history, there was the very same condition with the same hours was imposed on one of those applications that dealt with the use of that outside space more formally by people using the pub. So as the application does involve very minor alterations to that outside area, there's a fixed bench seat and the lighting, then it was considered prudent to reimpose that so that it's made clear that those conditions would apply. There may very well be licensing conditions as well that prevent use of that area outside. So it wouldn't be, I don't think it's justified to alter that, bring that forward, let's say, before 11 p.m, which is how it currently exists. It was just restating the fact that there is a restriction there.
Thank you. Can I ask one question? Is there any CCTV out there to check who's in and using it? When the staff are serving behind the bar, can they still check to make sure nothing's happening outside, noise-wise or anything?
I'm not certain on that one, and it's not an establishment that I've been to very recently, but I think in the past there may have been security on the door and things like that.
Well, the CCTV coming from the neighbours' flats on the wall, I mean, if you look at one of your pictures, you can actually see it up there. If you look at the one where you had the car outside Benson. No, go to the next one.
Well, it looks like on that one actually that there is something on the corner of the building.
And there's one on the corner of this side as well. Yeah, it is, look.
I think that's that is that what you talk about, the white thing? I think that's a flue. It looks like a boiler flue or something like that.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's specifically, because I don't know that they'd be able to put a CCTV that sort of looks into somebody else's property anyway. But actually, looking on that other photograph, and this is again is quite an old photograph, but it does look like there could be CCTV on the corner of the building there.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions, anyone? The recommendation is to approve both items, so we'll take the heritage one first. All those in... No, we've got to talk about this first, so we are moving both, because we've got a second for both. Thank you, to approve. Any discussion, anyone? Councillor Sands?
There may be a bit of archaeology there. It's obviously an ancient area, but we're talking about relatively small areas, so it's not as if they're going to uncover a Saxon palace or anything like that. I would say that that back area at the moment is a bit of a non-area, it's probably a bit of a junk area, and the addition of this addition for use as a kitchen is only going to improve the quality of food in the place and the safety of the people working there. So yeah, I think it's a welcome addition.
Any other discussions, anyone? Okay, we'll move to the bill. We're going to take the historic bit first. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. And then granting of the planning permission. All those in favour, please show. And that's unanimous as well. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Kiosk outside John Lewis, All Saints Green. Stephen Sunwell can't come, so David's going to take this and take us through the report when he's ready.
Thank you, Chair. This is application in a similar vein to the ones that have been before the committee before. This is in a different location. This is outside John Lewis on All Saints Green, and it's for the replacement of an existing kiosk with one of these BT street hubs. This is the location. Right. John Lewis is here, and then you're going Westwick Towers off here. And Pablo Frank is here, Pablo Frank House. You've seen this on several occasions. It's the same kind of structure that has been before committee previously, so it's double-sided, LCD screens proposed on both sides. And this is looking down south along the side of John Lewis. The existing kiosk. It has an illuminated advert on the north side at the moment. These are not going to mean a great deal, these figures, but at the moment, just for comparative purposes, the illumination of the advert that's on the kiosk at the moment is 180 candelas. For comparison, the LCD screens that are proposed on both sides of the new hub would be 300. Oops, sorry. This just shows the position in map form. So it's in exactly the same position as the hub was, as the kiosk is. The kiosk has the advert, internally illuminated advert facing north towards the church, and it has the phone facility on the southern side. And there'll be some pictures in a minute. There is indeed the. This is the elevation as existing, so you can see the level of illumination of the existing structure. And a bit more context context, deliberately kind of trying to take these photos at a time when the level of illumination shows up. Again, you can see the existing structure here. And we've got quite a few of those. This just shows the existing kiosk, so there's the phone, and then the advert is on this side, and then we have photos looking in the opposite direction. So this is the Grade 1 church. There is some illumination already on the, in fact no, sorry, there isn't. I think that's the flash from the camera. No, it isn't the flash from the camera. There is a degree of illumination on the side where the phone is. But again, this is just showing the context in the wider street scene. And all of the same. Okay, I'm going to leave that there. In common with the previous applications that the committee has considered, there are two applications, one for the replacement structure, and which is for full planning permission, and one for the adverts, which would be included on the structure. The issues, as we've been through before on the advert side of things, are more confined than you'd normally be able to take into consideration. So it's amenity and highway safety. You're not limited to that in terms of the planning application. There's a further complication with this one, because whilst the officer recommendation is to approve the planning permission, the officer recommendation for the adverts is probably something that the committee hasn't come across before. It's a split recommendation, and it's with adverts, that's the only kind of application where we can, as a local planning authority, approve part of the application and refuse another part. So the recommendation is to approve the adverts on the side, on the south, sorry, on the north side, so that's the side opposite to the side that you can see in this photograph, and refuse the permission to display the adverts on the south side. Unfortunately, it just kind of makes things slightly more complicated than they need to be. The recommendation omits a reason for refusal. So I was kind of frantically scrabbling away whilst Sarah was doing the previous item. And the reason for refusal for the adverts on the side, on the north side, as part of the recommendation, I appreciate we're going to have a debate about the application, but in terms of the recommendation will be to refuse adverts on the north elevation because, for this reason, the introduction of an illuminated LCD screen on the southern side of the street hub, have I got that right? Yes, on the southern side of the street hub would adversely affect the visual amenity of the street scene, which includes the setting of the Grade 1 listed All Saints Church, contrary to DM policies DM3 and DM9, and then to approve the advert subject to the conditions that are listed on page 65 and 66, with the exception of condition 11, because you don't need that, because we're going to refuse that one. Sorry. Yeah, you don't need that one. And that's the item, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Dan. This seems more complicated every time one come in to me. They started off looking good and then suddenly no better. Any questions? No. Well, yes. Councillor Peake and then Councillor Champion.
Thank you for your report. I got a bit confused. You mentioned in the north side and the south side. You said the north side is agreed, then you said it's not agreed. Can you clarify what one, please?
Yes, forgive me. I wasn't expecting to present this item, but that's not an excuse. The reason for refusal is that it's the elevation. The issue here from an officer point of view is that putting an additional illuminated advert into this view would impact upon the setting of the church. This is facing south. I think that those photographs are mislabeled. So, forgive me one moment. Yes, yeah, those adverts are, those photographs are unhelpfully mislabeled because that is actually the south elevation. So what the recommendation is to permit an advert on the north elevation, so that's the opposite side to the one that's in the photograph at the moment, and to refuse an advert on the south elevation, which is the one facing away from the church.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Councillor Champion.
I was actually going to ask a very similar question. I was a bit confused about the direction that we were discussing there.
Okay.
So, thank you.
The recommendations are to approve, and there's two recommendations, so we'll look at once. Have we got a seconder for that? Thank you. We move on to discussions. Any discussions, anyone? Councillor Sands.
Unlike the other ones we've had, I think this is the least objectionable, and it's interesting to note that the view we're facing here won't even have that little illuminated screen obscuring or affecting the view of the church. There's not a lot of traffic here, so its proximity to the edge of the road isn't going to be much of a problem. So of these we've seen so far, I have no objection to it.
Councillor Bergline, I've got you, Councillor Lubbock, in a minute. Councillor Bergline, Councillor Champion, and Councillor Lubbock.
I'm actually going to say the absolute opposite to that. I think of the ones that we've seen, this is the most objectable. We have had one in the city centre where there is illuminated areas around it with adverts already there. This is, I think, this place has, you know, through regeneration turned out as a beautiful amenity space for pedestrians and cyclists. And I'm glad that officers recommend not to approve the side that actually face where you would have the view onto the historic church, and you would have then an illuminated digital advert there. So I fully agree with that. I would go further and say I wouldn't like to see it on the other side either, facing towards John Lewis. So yes.
Councillor Champion.
I would go even further and suggest that the amenity of the site, the view, would be vastly improved by not having a monolith at this location, and that whether it's illuminated or not would be immaterial in my mind. I feel like it would be nice to remove it so you can actually get a nice view from that location of a nice bit of Norwich.
You actually know what the view is?
Sorry, pardon?
If you look at the church, you know what view you're seeing?
The view?
Yeah.
Yeah. I cycle through there frequently.
Yeah. Norwich Blue, got a big garden in there when he had the memorial piece and went over stuff, Twin City one. Councillor Lubbock.
Yes, I've got no problem with this at all. There's lots of advertising in John Lewis. It's an area where there's quite a lot of illumination. I'm just wondering if, and I'm happy to refuse the south aspect because of the listed building of All Saints behind. But if it's not approved for a LED display, will it remain as it is now, which is quite useful? To have a place to recharge and have your phone and have a phone there. I just wonder what will be on that side if it's not an LED.
It will be blank. Yeah, just blank.
Now, if we turn this down, David, will that one still be there?
Okay. No, because the hub that we're approving is slightly bigger than what is there at the moment, albeit just very slightly. But it would only have advertising on one side. So whereas in the photograph that's on the screen at the moment, you've got the phone paraphernalia and the little bit of illuminated screen for the whatever it is, you wouldn't have anything there at all.
So it's either an LED advertisement or nothing.
Or nothing, yeah, it would be blank.
It's a shame because I think the two together with something useful, a phone on one side. But anyway, I'm happy to go with the recommendation. Thank you.
Sorry, just for clarification, you'd still have the ability to kind of to access Wi-Fi and everything else that the hub provides. You just wouldn't have anything on the south-facing side.
Councillor Chamberlain?
I mean, I don't like this idea, but I've got a feeling that I'm not going to get away with stopping it. On this blank side, would it not be possible to have something explaining the view which you would be viewing, like some kind of information board to explain what you're seeing about the church? Would there not be a way to utilise this blank space in a positive way as an information board without being illuminated?
Potentially, but we would need to determine these applications that are before us at the moment, and then we'd need to put those possibilities to the applicant. We can't kind of alter their application for us, other than to kind of approve bits or refuse bits of it.
Right, here we go. Councillor Graham and then Councillor Bergline.
I would like to flag up the amenity of the area. It's a nice destination, you can sit and relax, and it's really detrimental to amenity to be looking at, to have flashing adverts demanding your attention. Also, it's not LED, which is energy efficient and slightly less intrusive. It's LCD, which is like the energy consumption of several houses. And I think we should turn it down.
Councillor Bergline?
Can I just clarify with regards to what Councillor Champion said, just for my own clarity? So, because we've got the full planning application, and in a sense for me, the structure already exists. So, if I would see this as kind of in a normal planning application, I'd have to take it to what's currently there, and then see if there is a material change to what is currently there. Is that right?
That's precisely it, yes. I mean, I take on board Councillor Champion's point that it would be nice not to have the thing at all, but the fact is that there is a structure there at the moment.
This will be a bit bigger, won't it?
And it is. This one is a little bit bigger, but yeah, you're looking at the increase in harm and whether or not that's acceptable.
Okay, we'll move to the route now if no one else got any discussion. We've got to take this in 2 points. Full application. All those in favour of the full application, please show.
Chair, it's a recorded vote, so I'll call out names. Please keep your hands up as I call you. Councillor Driver, Councillor Maxwell, Councillor Button, Councillor Bergline, Councillor Sands, Councillor Giles, Councillor Lubbock, Councillor Peat.
All those against, please show.
Those against are Councillors Champion and Councillor Graham.
The second one. Thank you. Then we move on to advertising, just on the north side.
No, as recommended in the report, Chair.
advertised as recommended in the report. All those in...
With the introduction of the reason for refusal that I read.
Yeah.
Can I just ask a question?
Yep.
So I would like to refuse both sites, but I'm worried that if I vote against the recommendation as it is, that then both sites will be approved. Do you see what I mean? So I want both sites to be refused, but I don't want my... You see what I mean? I want to put my weight to as much refusal as possible.
That's a separate recommendation.
Yes, Chair, you have to take the recommendation as proposed, and either, if you don't agree with that, then you either vote against or abstain, and then it comes back, if it fails to be determined, then it would come back to the committee to have another vote.
But you see my problem, that it's then more likely to come back to committee with actually both, because I'm not going to get both refused. So then it's more likely to get both approved if I don't vote in favour of the split, which I don't want to. But you see my dilemma here. I don't want to have to play strategics in planning.
I think you have to go with what's recommended, because that's been moved and seconded, and it recommended.
Or you propose a different recommendation. I mean, I'd like to propose the book on along, but...
Can I then just pose a recommendation to refuse both sides, and then you can vote me down, and then I can vote? Yeah, can we do that?
Have you got a seconder to that proposal?
For the record, I'll choose Councillor Champion to second.
Okay, any discussion on that?
Perhaps the reasons.
The immunity reasons that we had in the...
Okay, right. All those in favour of the recommendation, please show.
This is Chair.
No, this is Councillor Bergeron's recommendation.
So this is an amendment
Yep.
that Councillor Bergeron is introducing so that there is no LCD on either side.
That's...
Chair, it's been moved and seconded, and there are 3 members voting against, in favour of it, which is Councillors Bogerline, Champion and Graham.
Thank you. All those against, please show.
Those against the amendment are Councillors Maxwell, Button, Sands, Driver, Giles, Lubbock and Peat.
Thank you. So that's been lost.
So that has been lost.
We move on now to the recommendation which is in the report, advertising on one side. All those in favour, please show.
That is voting in favour are Councillors Driver, Councillor Maxwell, Councillor